Right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us in Torquay on such a lovely day. The topic in general that I wanted to discuss was just the direction of the country, because I'm very concerned about the direction in which the country's been heading for, well, since Tony Blair got into power, frankly. And I think that it needs to change. I think we actually need to have a conscious decision to actually change some of the major policies that are dominating this country's, the political life of it, to be honest. The first thing I would suggest is that we actually need to do something about mass immigration, because we've heard quite a lot from the Conservative governments. Theresa May saying that she's going to get it down to tens of thousands, but that hasn't happened. It's still 300,000 net a year. That strikes me as a particularly untenable situation if we want to preserve any of our social services, and it's one of those things that none of them can touch, because for some reason just having this conversation is considered to be racist, which leads us on to the next part, which is the domination of political correctness over any kind of public dialogue that we have. It's one of those things that's becoming drastically apparent to the point where Vladimir Putin comes over and he comments on the failure of liberalism, which is, in my opinion, a bit non-specific, but what he means, I think, is the extreme shift towards the left that politics has taken over the past 20 years. And I think it's something that we have to start pulling back. Now, these are the two things that are on my mind the most. But I suppose the third one would be, I would like to see some accountability for the institutional failures regarding the grooming gangs in this country. Because it seems that there's been, frankly, I don't want to say complicity, but it seems that the Labour Party, their councillors and their activists, and the media themselves create an environment in which it's unacceptable to talk about these things in any meaningful way. And you have many examples of the girls going to the press and saying, well, listen, for example, there was one reported in the Mirror the other day, I was raped 100 times and the police would arrest me. Now, I'm of the opinion that if it wasn't good enough for the Nazis to say, well, I was just following orders, it's not good enough for the policeman to enter a room and find two grown men and a drugged-up young girl and then arrest the girl as if she's a prostitute. That's just not good enough. You know, I don't care what the Home Office says. I don't care what the Labour councillors say. I'm afraid I'm at the point where I want these people held accountable for walking into that room and then deciding the young girl was the problem. So these are the things that are mainly on my mind. What do you think, Alan?
Carl, I absolutely agree with you on this last one about the rape gangs.
Hang on a second. John, can we turn this up a bit? Oh, is it? Is it? Right, okay. Sorry if I'm blowing your heads off there.
Can you hear me now? You can hear me now, yeah, okay. Right. I think this rape gang crisis, which has been going on in our country now for probably 3 or 4 decades, I calculate that something like 250,000 predominantly English young girls, 250,000, have been groomed and raped, repeatedly raped, by predominantly Pakistani, but not only, predominantly Pakistani Muslim men. It's a huge crisis, but nobody will talk about it. This is where we come around to what you're allowed to talk about, political correctness, or the narrowing of the scope of which you and I can talk about in respectable or media-savvy company. The scope for us to debate things like this is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, because the moment I know to my own person,
do you want to try the other mic?
Hold it high. Oh, sorry about that.
No, your hand up further on the mic. Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah, I think it blocks the transmitter.
Okay, fine, thanks. I know to my own cost that the moment you raise the issue of the rape gangs or the grooming gangs, you're immediately accused of being, 1, Islamophobic, and 2, racist, and they'll add another lot along to it, bigot and so on and so forth. But those 2 words are words designed to shut down discussion, particularly on this issue, but not only on this issue, on many of them. So that whole area of free speech, our ability to talk about the things that are on your heart and on my heart, and the things that are important to you and to me, and how we're not allowed to do so by those that rule over us, is a real key issue. That's what the whole freedom of speech thing, but especially around grooming gangs and elsewhere. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it seems to me that this state of affairs has been engineered by the Labour Party when they were in government, and has just been perpetuated by the Conservatives. Now, I find it very, very strange that the Conservatives didn't essentially enter office and then undo everything that the Labour Party had done. it seems remarkably irresponsible to me to leave the borders open. Like, that doesn't seem like a conservative thing to do, to just allow hundreds of thousands of people from elsewhere to just come and live here without any particular standards. You know, it's just anyone coming in. And for example, a story I like to tell is I used to live above a restaurant called the Jewel and the Crown, which is an Indian-owned restaurant in Swindon. And the chap who owned it had come over in the 70s or late 60s, and he was the person... I've never met someone so furiously against mass immigration as this chap, because he was just like, well, when I came here, I had to work to come here, and I came here for a good reason, because I thought it was a decent place. And now you're inviting all of the people he would describe as, I guess, riffraff to come over, and they don't respect your country. And it's one of those things where it's... effectively, I don't know, it can't go on forever. That's the thing. It just can't go on forever. This has to come to an end. Because, I mean, look at the example of the NHS, for example, right? If we have 600,000 new people come in every year and 300,000 people leave, we've got 300,000 people who are now able to access a service that's free at the point of use, but have not paid into this system. This means that the people who are already here have that cost is on their back. And then the very next year, another 300,000 people come in. So it's now on the back of the people who have arrived the previous year, and it carries on. It's effectively like a pyramid scheme that continues to get larger and larger and larger. And again, pyramid schemes are illegal because they don't go on forever. They do eventually collapse, and a lot of people end up losing out. This is it's just something that can't be said in the mainstream, even though the Tories will pay lip service to it and then do nothing. You know, there's no impetus, there's no push from the press, there's no push from, well, any of the other parties as far as I can see. They all seem to be in favour of it because the Conservatives are the party of big business. They benefit from cheap labour. This, in turn, makes things more difficult for the working people of this country. And it's just one of those things where it's like, well, who benefits from all of this? And I tell you what, it's not the regular working man and woman of this country who benefits from the state of affairs. This is directly something that's at your expense and will get worse. So the question is, how do we make them do something about it? Personally, I think that UKIP had a very successful campaign with Brexit. It took a long time, admittedly, but it was very successful because they had a particular divisive thing that they would demand. We want to leave the European Union. And that either put you all for or against it. And so I think that one of the things that we could do going forward is just sit there and put on the table and say, look, we want a physical cap on immigrants into the country, say 50,000 or however many. We could just put that on the table, and then that's going to be, again, another for or against. And if we push this for long enough and hard enough, then we may well be able to get another referendum on mass immigration. And I think that we know how the public's going to vote on that. But what do you reckon?
I agree, but I think what we've got to do is tackle the arguments of those who want to have open borders and let anybody in. And just to put the size of the issue, every year in England, we have to build a city the size of Newcastle upon Tyne in order to accommodate the immigrant community. A new city the size of Newcastle upon Tyne, houses, sewage, building, the whole lot. We have to do that just to accompany those who are coming in. But the arguments for those that believe in free movement is, well, they say, look at the NHS. If we didn't have the immigrant community, the NHS would collapse. But they always, of course, look at one side of the argument and not the other. And what they don't talk about is how many of our doctor surgeries around where I live in the East End of London, our doctor surgeries are full of immigrant communities, consumers who are using it. We have to deal with that particular argument. We have to deal with the argument people say, well, they contribute to society. They add to the variety of society, and they come and they work and so on and so on. They take the jobs that nobody else wants. All those sort of arguments we have to be able to confront. But I agree with you, Carl, that this whole thing about mass immigration and therefore the impact on our culture, on our society, on everybody here and elsewhere is a key issue. I'm with you on that.
I love the fact that you... Hello, right. I like the fact you bring this up because it's the same sort of question about Japan, actually. Japan also has socialized healthcare services, but they're not constantly under strain because Japan does not have mass immigration. It's the need for immigrant doctors is to fulfill the need of the hundreds of thousands of people that are arriving each year. Yeah. If this was not the case, then we would not desperately need to headhunt the best and brightest from other countries. And I really do dislike the whole headhunting the best and brightest from other countries anyway, because I think those countries probably need their doctors. They need that. Well, it's not that racist. Well, no. It's the argument is that we're richer than them. Any luck with this, Johnny? The argument is that we're richer than them, and we can afford to offer their doctors higher pay. But the point is that's a form of kind of neo-colonialism. What we're saying is the Indians can raise and train their doctors, and then we're just going to pinch them for our benefit. I mean, A, they weren't our resources that went into training those doctors, but B, don't we think that the Indians might need their own doctors, you know? And the consequence of this is that it pulls up the ladder to our own working class anyway, because we should be offering them lifts up on. We should be offering down a ladder. Say, look, you can go up this to get to a better place in society. This is what social mobility is. Right. Yeah. Right. Brilliant. Right. Yeah. So this is key behind social mobility, is actually providing people a way up out of a situation they find themselves in. So it just seems to be, frankly, an unfair situation that benefits, again, the sort of liberal Democrat voting middle-class lovies who want it all one way and don't want to accept that there are problems that are a consequence of that. And all of these things, like you say, housing, it's unreal. How many, was it 400,000 new houses they would have built? Something like that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And it's
extraordinary.
I mean, that is an unbelievable number, considering that in Britain, the birth rate is actually declining. There are less people being born in new generations, and this is a problem in and of itself. It's something that has to be talked about. But the fact that we have to build so many houses means that it's going to be, I mean, if these are taxpayer-funded houses, then you're paying for people who were born and live abroad and are citizens of other countries to come over and live here. And it's like, why? Why? To whose benefit is this? And again, most of the time, it's the business-owning class. But anyway, sorry.
No, I agree. As I say, I live in London, and our dear mayor, Sadiq Khan, is frequently telling us we have a housing crisis. Duh, we have a housing crisis. Duh, we have a housing crisis. He also happens to be very much an open borders guy. Let them all in. Yeah. And Sadiq Khan can't put the two things together. Let everybody in, and we have a crisis there. But that's a problem with our mayor in London. It really is. But actually, it's a problem with all those that are on the liberal open borders side. They won't put the two together, and they don't want us to talk about that.
Yes.
That's the problem. And again, it's one of these issues you raised right at the beginning. What are we allowed to talk about, and what are we now not allowed to talk about? Yeah. And that's a huge issue for us.
Yeah. And I don't really see why they are so attached to it either. I mean, it seems to be an ideological conviction where they think that the idea of a border is immoral, and then they'll go to the Glastonbury Festival, which has a giant border, and right on it there are no borders on this border. So I don't know. I mean, are they even persuadable at this point?
I don't think so. I mean, so many of them are sold onto the whole globalist, what I call the Anglophobic viewpoint. They actually think the nation state is not a good thing, and that certainly being English is not a good thing, and therefore we must let the borders down, let everybody else come in, and therefore the whole idea about being patriotic is a racist concept, being pro-English is a racist concept. Don't talk about it, open the borders, let everybody in. That's the sort of nutty world we live in, at least amongst the sort of liberal authoritarian elite that we live under. Yep. See,
I'm glad you brought up the question of being English, actually, because this is something I've been thinking about quite a lot as well. The United States is often the country that's used as a model for mass immigration because the United States handled mass immigration very, very well. And I think they handled mass immigration very well because they had a particular ideology regarding it. It was, you can come to America and become an American. Now, becoming an American is an adoption of a certain set of values. And this is not something that Europe has had to do because America is a country that was founded through revolution. Most European countries are ancient. They weren't founded themselves through revolutions. And so what we can call them really is ethnic countries. They're countries that are built up out of a particular ethnicity or a collection of ethnicities that have been living together for a very long time. When you open the borders and have mass immigration American style, you need a kind of unifying philosophy that underpins this in the same way the Americans have, or you find yourself with people who say, well, there is no such thing as English culture, and therefore all of these other cultures that are coming in are valid, in fact more valid than the culture of the country in which you find yourself. But more importantly, you're not even allowed to critique them. You're not allowed to criticize them. You're not allowed to say you don't like these things, because that is a form of oppression or something like that. So this, I think, has put the English into a bit of an identity crisis. If they're constantly being told by the media, well, you don't exist, then who are we? What are we doing? where are we? What are we occupying? What do we call ourselves? And it seems distinctly unfair, because they'd never do it to the Scottish, the Welsh, or the Irish, would they? They would never turn around and say, you are not a people. What is Scottish culture anyway? That you'd never hear that. You would never hear that. And so we end up with, for example, the capital of England, London, being minority English. Now, the whole the double standards of the global the globalist worldview is like Sadiq Khan's worldview. As soon as John Cleese points that out, that's treated as if it's heresy. As if,
and
oh
racist,
God,
and racist.
You can't say that now London is minority English, but it's true, and it's what you've been advocating for decades, Sadiq Khan. This is your idea of having this world city that isn't any one particular thing. Well, now it isn't, and people can see it. You're not allowed to say that. Why?
I think also we've got to look at the whole thing as why what the globalists are now trying to stick on us is particularly on the English. You're right to distinguish between the Scots can be proud of being Scots. The whole Scottish nationalist thing, that's fine if you want.
Well, they're currently ruled by the Nationalist Party.
Absolutely, yeah, they can do that. And same with the Welsh. But there's something specific about the English that the globalists stick their dislike, their hostility on the English in particular. And I think part of it, there's a whole load of reasons for it, but one of the reasons is what they suffer from is a sort of post-colonial guilt, because it was always thought to be the English rather than the Scottish and the Welsh and so on, the English that went and conquered the world and so on and so forth. And now the globalists and similar sort of people feel very guilty about that, if they're English themselves. So that whole factor of hand-wringing post-colonial guilt is a big factor. It's why the English alone almost are not allowed to have a nation, not allowed to be proud of being English, because look what we did.
Well, and that I find particularly patronising to the Scots and the Welsh, who played a key part in the empire itself. Like, a lot of people don't realise that a disproportionate number of the soldiers who fought for the empire were Scottish.
Absolutely. And a disproportionate number of the judges and the governor generals went around Scots.
Yeah.
They clearly thought that Scotland was too small for them, so they strutted around the world. You're absolutely right on that one, Carl. Yeah.
But it's and again, it was one of those things that all of this comes down to being placed as kind of burden on the backs of the English. And I don't want to see things get worse. I obviously want to see things get better. But until we can start addressing these things in an honest way, I don't think they're going to. I really don't. But, right, so we've laid out basically what we're here to talk about. Is there anyone who'd like to come up and say a few words? Anyone's got any opinions on anything we've said? I refuse to believe. I know some of the activists here. I refuse to believe you've got nothing to say.
Come on, we don't bite up here.
Come on. How's it going?
Great, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Seriously.
I just want to say, I think you're a legend. I'm not an activist, and I think this country's going down the pan. All right, and I'm a UKIP member as well. And my son met you in Totnes, and he told you that we did a song for Tommy Robinson. I remember that. So, but we've been watching out just through him, and I just think you're doing a great job. I'd just like to say, carry on.
Well, what are you most concerned about since you're here?
We've been talking about immigration, and I think that if we had something like a bit more like Australia, where people were vetted more, and then you don't get the arse end of people, what I would call the arse end of people,
the riffraff.
The riffraff, yeah. You don't want.
Sorry, let's come around here a bit.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Because they're not doing our economy any good, and English people can say, "Oh well, they're taking our jobs," but we really need to be the ones that are standing up and saying, "Actually, I want that job."
Well, there is actually quite a lot of evidence to show that mass immigration has had a really negative effect on wages and jobs. Because since the Brexit referendum, there's been something of an exodus of Eastern Europeans who have obviously come over looking for work because they make a lot more money here. And since the Brexit referendum, I suppose that the consideration from them has been, well, I guess this sort of gravy train is over. I'm just going to go back. But what this has done is this has started making wages rise. Unemployment's at the lowest level it's been since the 70s. And there was a report out today that showed construction workers have received something like £3,500 a year increase in wages because of all the Polish migrants going back to Poland.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, there we go. You couldn't ask for more cast iron proof that mass immigration has been bad for the financial situation of the working man and woman of this country.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you on that one.
Well, thank you very much for coming up.
Thank you.
Right, so has anyone got any opinions on what we can do regarding the grooming gangs of Rotherham and elsewhere? How many cities was it now? How many different cities have these gangs appeared in?
Dozens of cities, even down here in Plymouth. They have had a grooming gang in Plymouth. So, sorry, we all right?
Come on over, man. That's a very good question. I don't know. Do you know? Really? 117,000? No, tell me. Really? Why don't you come up? We'll give you a mic. Yeah, but no. I want you to come up. Come and talk to us. Come on.
Good man.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's fine. That's why I want to hear from you. Hey, don't shout. Just talk normally into the mic.
First of all, fella,
that's all right.
I'm about as uneducated as it comes.
And you got to keep that next to your mouth. Sorry.
I'm about as uneducated as it comes.
That's okay.
Okay, no schooling, no understanding.
Bit closer.
But do you own me?
No, of course not.
But you're a politician.
Well, not really.
You tried to be a politician?
Again, I think I was proving a point. But
Sorry,
you've got to keep it up.
Sorry, do you live in Torquay?
I live in Swindon.
In where, sorry?
Swindon.
Yeah. You want to represent us in South West Devon?
I don't really want to represent anyone.
You want to represent us, didn't you?
Well, no, I don't want to, but I felt compelled to do something.
For what purpose?
To start tabling these sort of conversations.
Do you bring a lot of hate with you?
I don't feel very hateful. Have you heard any hate?
No, but you've been attacked, haven't you?
Yeah, but that's okay.
No,
there's always going to be.
Hang on.
So you've got to hold it up.
Sorry.
It's okay. There's always going to be kickback from the established order when you're challenging
Definitely, of course.
You know?
Of course. What I'm trying to say is, look, let's get on a level, on a real level. People threw a milkshake at you.
You've got to hold it up.
Somebody threw a milkshake at you.
Yeah.
How'd you feel?
Great. That means they've got no argument.
Oh man, you didn't. That hurt you.
No. That's why I was smirking.
Okay. So in a
no. When someone chucks a milkshake at you, that means that they've come to the very end of their argument. They've got exactly. I'm doing something right because they've got absolutely nothing to say, and yet my argument still stands.
Can we not agree? Somebody hurt him.
It didn't hurt.
Stop. Listen. So he was hurt in a situation. What are we going to justify that? Okay.
Yeah.
Has anybody got a laptop or a computer so we can go online?
Well,
just for a
not off second, but what is it you want to say?
See,
I'll just take what you're saying on faith.
I come from Torquay.
Yeah.
Roman Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I love Jesus Christ.
I love
Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Yeah, I follow God.
Okay.
I don't follow man.
Okay.
I don't want your chains anymore.
You sorry?
I don't want your chains anymore.
I don't ever recall having any chains
Politics,
for anyone.
it's a chain.
I agree, it's pretty awful, but it's the way we do things.
Let me explain something about politics to everybody here. Okay? Do you see many politicians going to war? Do you? Do you see many politicians going to war? Hang on. He said it, didn't he? He said Winston Churchill. You know Winston Churchill, right? Winston Churchill on the beaches. But was he a raging alcoholic?
Well, hang on. Okay, hang on. Right, so
dialogue.
No. I know, but Winston Churchill was actually a soldier. But
that's the point.
Look,
that's the point. We are all hurting each other, and we are getting nowhere. Why? Because you are already educated. I can't cause any problems because I've got no education.
Why not?
Can you blame me?
Well,
No, hang on. Look, you're all jumping in. Try and understand what I'm saying.
Okay, well, lay it out
Do
calmly.
you need anybody to follow? Any of you?
Well, we do live in a representative democracy, so that means that every 5 years we elect representatives.
So let's explain democracy.
Hang on. It's not so much about following; it's more about selecting someone who that you think on a real conviction is going to go and argue for the causes that you believe in.
So do you tell me that I must believe in politicians?
No. You can believe in anything you like.
But the politicians run my life.
Yes, that's why we have to talk about politics.
So realism do the politicians own me?
No, they don't own you, but
Does
they
anybody own me?
They direct the political course of the country.
Right. So let's look at it in a realism. You stood up here with this gentleman here.
Yep.
And you spoke about the grooming gangs.
Yes.
Going on. Okay.
Yes.
How many thousands? How many grooming gangs?
We don't actually know how many.
How many girls?
Probably, yeah, hundreds of thousands.
250,000. Over 30 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a fair comment then? That is the truth. Yeah, that is the truth. Okay. Hold with me a minute. I don't want you to be angry with me.
All right.
You've allowed me. This
no
gentleman's
one's
allowed.
angry. Just go through it calmly. It's all right. There's no hurry. We're
But
here all
the-
afternoon.
Right. So what I'm trying to get out
Yeah.
is I think this country has rulers
Yes, it does.
that rule me. Well,
In a
today
way, yeah.
I'm going to say on the top of my voice,
Yeah.
you do not rule me.
Okay.
Okay. She's not my queen.
Okay, but the people in
Sorry. But we've done an election, didn't we? Did we do a UE election?
Vote every election. That is your vote,
Okay.
and you decide.
That is
and the
fantastic.
majority.
Let's talk
decide.
about Article 50.
Okay.
Right? Did
had
we
a
do anything?
We had a referendum. The majority of people voted to leave. So what's your problem?
The problem is we're going nowhere, are we?
Well, in that
The
case,
truth is-
in that case, we're
Look,
going to have something like Boris
hang
who
on,
says.
hang on, please.
In that case, we're going to have something like Boris who says we're definitely leaving.
See,
on the
everybody
31st
look at the top of that wall up there.
I'm looking at you.
Okay.
Right? The reason I'm asking you to, on there it says a broken town for broken men.
Who says that?
That on that wall, right in front of you, on the top of there. Just walk down there.
Where does it
20
say
minutes. In black, on that. See where
And
that. all that
unfortunately, my eyesight isn't that great.
sorry,
so you
my
know.
eyes,
Right.
my. Just on the top there,
What do you
it
mean?
says a broken town for broken men.
This town's not broken.
Do you not think
I've
so?
lived here 56 years.
56 years.
Yeah.
We have the highest level of depression
Yeah.
in the country here.
Do you do anything for charity?
Look, it's not
No, I'm
about
asking
me.
you. No, you're talking about
This
a
is
broken.
not about
You're
me.
talking about a broken town. What do you
Okay.
do to help the broken town?
Right, okay.
What do you do?
What I do is I study disease.
What's
I
that
study
got
cancer.
to do with a broken town?
Because I see how many people are depressed. How many
And-
people
and
commit
do you-
suicide over the
and
last
do
2
you
weeks in
see-
this town?
Do you see homeless people?
I see homeless people
Yeah?
all the time.
Do you work with them?
I can't. How can I do everything? I
What
can't
do you mean
be.
everything?
I work with
2 or
disease.
3 hours
What am
a
I
w-
supposed to do?
Look, 2 or
Shall I
3
leave the cancer
Listen
patient?
to me.
Okay.
2 or 3 hours a week helping the homeless does an awful lot.
You're right. You are
Yeah,
so
I,
right.
I,
But
I
I'm
do
trying
it.
to help so
I
many.
do it.
I
So
get
stop
confused.
going on about crap.
No, I'm not.
You
on
are
about
going
crap.
about crap.
Hang on. here's
Instead of
the whole point.
instead of talking about Torquay being broken, fix
That's
it.
what Paul said.
Well, you fix it.
I'm going to.
Fix
The
it.
point is
You're
okay,
not.
okay,
You're not
no,
doing anything
no,
to fix it.
Hang on, you're overriding me. Right? Allow me to
Because
speak.
I haven't got a clue what you're talking about.
Okay, so let me get into it
All
so
you're
we can
doing is
talk.
babbling on like a politician.
Okay.
You know, you never answer a question.
Right. So my purpose of here was to identify that there was 117,000 children that went missing last year.
Does it matter whether it's 117 or whether it's one child?
But
What
we're
is the
only here.
difference?
These
What-
gentlemen
what
are
is-
only
what
talking
is the-
about the grooming
What
gangs.
is the
though.
difference? Yeah, but if it's one child that's been groomed, that's one too many.
Come back over this side a bit because we're out the range
See,
of the camera. So, do you want to take
it
this?
matters for every child.
You can do it.
It matters for every child.
Yes, one child that matters.
Okay, so now
I talked about numbers of 100,000. Talk about one child.
Fella,
That's
can
more
I
than
ask?
enough.
Can I ask a
That's
small
why you
favour?
take
Can
action.
I ask a small favour?
You can ask me anything at all.
I've come here. I've waited over a year to speak to Carl.
Well, I've only just come on the spur of the moment.
That's the thing. Could I have my moment with Carl?
Well, you've been going on for about 15 minutes now.
I know.
And you still
But
haven't.
you've done.
I
You've
still-
done
I
11 minutes without talking.
I still don't even know what you're talking about.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to get to. If I
Well,
could have, if
well,
I
let's
could have
find
a
out what
moment.
you're talking about, can
Okay.
you?
Okay.
Don't be like a politician. Ask a question
Be
and get
direct.
an answer.
Yeah,
I'm
be direct.
I'm uneducated.
Well, I'm
So
uneducated.
if I'm so
Hey,
different,
mate,
you
there's
must teach
nobody
me
more
different ways.
uneducated than me. I left school at 15 with nothing.
This is not an education lesson.
Well, you started
What
it.
I'm
You started
trying
on
to-
about education, not me.
Okay, well,
point-
okay. So we thank you very much for your input. I very much appreciate it.
You're more than
Um,
welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And right, we'll try and go through this slowly then, because I feel that we jump ahead
I
a bit.
rush.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
rush.
there's no hurry. Right.
What it is sometimes I kind of open the picture up.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Okay,
And
so
over the last few years, say over the last 20 years,
yeah,
I've been watching how many kids are going disappearing over a yearly basis. I've been looking at how many children are taken out of the home, out of the system, and put into a care system. Now, in a real, I don't know if anybody actually knows this, but in the care system, where the children are taken out of the family home, put into a care system, 86% of them children will suffer with some type of abuse.
Yep.
But they're taken out of a system and put into a new system. But we're not talking about that.
Okay,
right?
you're right. I'm not talking about that.
No.
No.
And you gentlemen here, you are so right. This badness is it. The evil out there, it is bad.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say to you is, let's focus on it all, rather than a tunnel vision for just some.
Okay, so
Tommy,
hang on. Let's stop there, because I disagree with your methodology. I appreciate that we do need to deal with as much as we can do, but I think that focusing on it all is actually a way to essentially focus on none of it.
Okay.
I think you actually do have to break any problem. You have to break it down into manageable components.
Definitely.
Like the great phrase. You know, if you want to climb a mountain, you start one step at a time.
But that man at the top of the mountain has a long way to fall.
Well, yeah, sure, but I'm not worried about being at the top of the mountain until I get there.
Right.
Because the problem that we have in the country at the moment is that I really think that it's a series of a sort of cascade of institutional failures that led to grooming gangs happening, and I don't think these failures are being addressed. And that means if they're not going to be addressed, I don't think they can be corrected. And there's such an obvious evil that it's amazing how there has been anyone on the other side of it.
How did it get that bad?
Well, that's the point that we're trying to get to the
Education.
bottom of. No, I think this is actually nothing to do with education.
Education is the biggest problem we've got in this country. Because we've got bad teachers.
Well, it really depends where you are and who you're being taught by. But the problem is that's not going to change the fact that there were gangs of men who'd specifically groom English girls. That's not going to change.
Have you heard of the story Oranges and Sunshine?
No.
Has anybody heard of the story Oranges and Sunshine? Anybody? Okay, man, you're all against Muslims.
No. Look, it's
right. I'm asking you the question. Have you seen the?
Why can't he just answer the man's question?
yeah. Come on, let's focus on.
Politician and go on way
Yeah.
off.
So it just strikes me that it seems to be worth discussing these actual tangible failures that we can identify, rather than extrapolating things into a much broader.
So is talk
scheme.
going to get us anywhere?
I'm sorry?
Is talk going to get us anywhere?
Yes.
I've watched you for 2 years.
Yes.
And you're a very good talker.
Thank you.
You know, to me, where you got 1 million subs. You know, you're a hero out on that YouTube world.
Thank you.
But in the real world, I don't want you to own me anymore.
Well, I don't own you.
I don't want to change anymore. And the reason I was saying about the story about sunshine and oranges, or oranges and sunshine, it's a story about 700,000 children what were taken out of this country by force and shipped over to Australia.
Okay.
We don't want to talk about that.
Okay, but when did that happen?
Let's not worry about that.
Yeah.
There's no talking
What
about
do you
that.
know about life? Because
I studied
all
cancer.
you've said up
Do
to
you
now,
think, do you think in
I've-
studying cancer,
look,
do you think I learn anything
go
from it?
and work with the homeless. Go and work with people like that, and then you'll learn more.
Okay, so I feel that we're.
Okay,
Hang on.
one last
Go on.
question. One
Go on
last
then.
question. One last question.
Go on.
I've come all this way, so just one
Okay.
one last question. You know, I am, like I said, I am pretty much about as uneducated as it comes. But, you know,
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to get
Yeah.
into that either.
yeah, I know. You come up with a cure nowadays, mate. You don't get 5 days into the future. No, I'm vitamin C.
Okay, but
So-
go on.
but
What
my
was
point-
it?
Right. So the point is we're suffering
Hang
with
on,
so
hang on.
many things in this country. We're suffering with disease. So that's where I would like to put my heart into disease. So I find a solution, find a cause, find a solution.
Right, if we're suffering in this country from all kinds of diseases, why do we give 15 billion a year to foreign countries?
The government last year spent 500 million.
No,
The,
15 billion.
right.
And in
The government last year spent 500
Hang on,
million
hang on.
on cancer research. They created 100 new drugs, right? None of them worked. So for 500 million, the government put into research into cancer.
What's that got to do with giving 15 billion a year away?
Listen, we've got to look after our community. I've got. Right, but my point is,
We look after the people here, not abroad. We give 15 billion plus a year away in foreign aid. Why do we do that?
because you pay your taxes.
Of course I paid all my... So why do I want to give it away to some foreign country?
The point
to some
is
dictator?
The point is tax is nothing but theft.
Why do we do it?
Tax is nothing but theft.
So...
Tax is nothing.
Okay. No. Well, you're not answering the question. You're soapboxing.
No, I asked you a question. You're not answering it.
You keep going on about, like, what am I doing to help? What am I doing?
Excuse me.
Well, I'm asking you...
You've taken the stage for long enough, right? There's other people out here
Yeah.
that'd like to have other questions. Yeah?
Carl, okay, my last question is just
You
simple.
keep it on point.
Politics is dying. It's a dying breed.
Yeah.
We can see it across Europe.
Yeah.
We're seeing it across all over. That's what's happening.
I-
Politics has got
I
us to
don't
where
think
we
there's.
are
I don't
now.
think there's any end
There's a
to
lot-
politics,
No one's
and I
really
think
arguing
that's.
with you, mate.
No, and the realism is I think absolutely awesome the things you've done. But I do feel the pain. You saying it was nothing for somebody.
Can I interrupt again? Right, you've got a guy here that's taken the stage. He's come here for a good reason. He's not had much of a chance to get a word in edgeways.
Politicians running my life.
Right,
Okay. Well.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you.
right. I'm nobody. I'm nobody.
There you go.
Right, I'm nobody special.
Hello, sir.
I would
Nice to meet you.
how do you do?
I'm nobody special either.
I'm not part of any political party or anything else like that.
Sorry,
Right?
can you come over this way.
I only heard.
Don't put that at the speaker.
I only heard about you by word of mouth by a colleague over there that said you were here.
Right, sorry, can you? We've got a camera there, so do you mind?
I'll get
coming-
fame now as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I
you
get
know.
some fame, right.
But yeah, sorry, sir. Yeah.
I've got no political connection to any party. I've got no bias on any account.
Mm-hmm.
Friend of mine told me you were here. I've listened, and that's it.
Yeah.
The first question I'd ask you: what's your motivation for being here?
My motivation for being here is because I can see that there is a kind of bleeding wound in the country, and nobody's interested in trying to stitch it back up.
Yeah.
And it's probably because it's very uncomfortable to talk about,
Yeah.
and it requires, I think, a certain kind of bullheadishness
So
to just go straight through
I'd
it.
agree with you on that immediately, right? I've listened to politicians that all tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. You're here. What's your motivation to be here when everyone else says the same thing? How do you think you're going to change things? I'd ask you, then, have you got a direction? When you're speaking to people here, they're all on board with what you're saying. Everyone's in general terms of what you're saying because you know what sound bites might be listened to and heard. Yeah. And
I'm terrible with sound bites.
I sound as if I'm somebody's medium, just trying to cause trouble.
Oh, no.
But the point is, what
Yeah.
I'd say is, you're here. I think there's a real moment in this nation at the moment where really an awful lot of people have really a lot of grievance about where we've got to today.
Agreed.
And I think that they're looking for somebody they can believe in. Now, Nigel Farage, he likes his audience, but can you believe in him? I don't know who you can believe in these days. And I think that's what the population's looking at. Now, you're here. Why? Are you somebody are you leading a team of people to get a groundswell behind you to do something? Or what are you here for?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, actually. I think
Because there's an audience here wasting their time just listening to nobody that's not going to do anything for
Well,
them.
this is... Okay.
I mean, Facebook and the mediums which you'll use for TV might make you a lot of money.
Oh,
So
no.
Good reason to be there.
No, this
Yeah.
costs me money. This doesn't
Yeah.
make me a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I think the reason to do this is to start inserting into the public consciousness that there are a few really important pillars.
More than a few.
Well, yeah, more than a few. But I think there are a few that I think take precedence over other things because of the weight of them and the lingering and like the ripple effect that they've had across the nation. Mass immigration, grooming gangs, and various other things.
So
things like this are
where's
real.
Have you got a message, or are you just asking the people
Yeah,
to talk?
I absolutely do. Well, I mean, one, we need to put a cap on immigration. I think we need a physical limit to the number of people who come into the country. It's not an infinite country that we have. We don't have infinite money.
Everyone knows the history. 40 million, 18 million in the dark ages, whatever.
Yeah.
Now we're at 60, 70, and the
Yeah.
government doesn't
Where does
even
it
know
end?
how many.
Yeah, exactly. They
So,
don't know how many.
so
The
I
next
agree.
census is going to be eye-opening in 2022, I think it is.
Where's it going?
Well, it's going to be eye-opening, isn't it? So one of the things that I think, like the demand for the Brexit referendum, in fact, entered the public consciousness, and it started growing and like a monster underneath
But
the
where's
Conservatives. Well, hang on a
where's your
second. Hang on a
stage
second. I'll tell you.
going? Where's your stage
I'll
going?
tell you. It's one of those things where if we keep pushing this issue, eventually whoever's in power is going to have to address it, or they're going to find themselves taken over by UKIP or whatever party is on board with this issue. The second thing is I want some accountability for the Labour-run councils that allowed these grooming gangs to go on.
Yeah.
I want those people in trouble because they should damn well be in trouble. And at the moment, everyone's acting like, well, you know, I mean, we've put the groomers in jail. No, what's the problem?
I mean, there's no accountability in anything. We've got potholes all over this country. It's
Yeah.
costing you millions.
Sorry, a little bit closer. To that.
Yeah, it's costing you millions.
Yeah.
You know, blah, 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 blah. There's money wasted left, right, and centre.
Yes.
But who's bringing to anybody to account? It just goes on and it
Well,
goes on.
it has to be the people.
Yeah.
It has
But
to be us.
Where's your movement with people? What
Well,
are you
this-
here for?
This is stage one to start
Right.
discussing this, and we'll
Well, I'm
going to
give my stage up. Can I just stir things up?
Yeah, no, of course. But, thank you very much. Good point. Sorry, who? Oh, well, feel free to come next. Oh, no. If she was first, she should definitely come first. We queue in this country, I think, don't we? That's okay.
Oh, that's right. No, it's just that I had a point to talk about, and
Yep.
I used to work in a
You have
men's
to hold that fairly close
high
enough.
security prison in the 1990s in Belmarsh.
Right.
And I was teaching
Blimey.
in the education department. It was quite serious, and we had the IRA and Cat A.
Yep.
And I could see then that things were going very badly because Wandsworth Council, Maggie Thatcher's favourite borough, were cutting. Cut. Every
Yeah.
year they were cutting back, and I could see that there was going to be a problem because education was going to get cut back. And you had a lot of people in there that either were learning a trade, which was not the kind of trade you wanted them to learn, which was how to be a drug dealer or make ecstasy off the net,
Yeah.
because they could and it was cheap. And I could see that this was going to be a bad thing. And now we're told that the screws are locking themselves in a room because they're running riot.
Really? I haven't been following that particularly.
Right. It seems that because everybody's droning or bringing in spice, everybody's off their face. They're doing
Right.
crazy stuff. They're doing stupid stunts. You don't pay. You get beaten up. It's part of the course. But not so much that. But I noticed back in the 90s there were Muslims coming in then, and I was very interested about what Tommy Robinson was talking about, saying that Muslim gangs are running their own gangs in there, trying to bring people over to their way of thinking. And if you don't go with what they like, you put yourself at risk. You could be beaten up, you could be stabbed. Anything could happen. It all happens in the showers.
Well, this is actually something that the prison service has recognised now,
Yes,
isn't it?
yeah,
It's-
they
and it
have
took
said
decades for
now-
them to recognise
Yes.
it as a
Yes.
problem. But
Yeah.
and-
But they've poo-pooed Tommy Robinson. He's been talking about it for
Yeah.
years, and now they say, oh, hang on a minute, the Ministry of Justice has just realised that Tommy Robinson was right.
yes,
But they're not going to give him credit.
no, they're going to hate him because he brought the message first when
Yes.
they didn't want to hear about it.
No,
and
but
even now, like in UKIP's manifesto, they've actually got a part where they want to separate the jihadis from non-radicalised Muslims, which seems eminently sensible to me, which is now government policy. And it's something they're actually doing. And yet when Gerard was addressed, I think it was by Sky News, where they were like, you'd like to do this. They were addressing him as if he was wrong to even mention it.
Yes.
And it's like, no, that's a really sensible policy.
Yes.
It's what we obviously need to do to prevent further radicalisation.
Yes.
And it is what the government does at the moment. So
Yes.
what's the problem?
I know.
It's
just
just-
that anybody apart from the government can't be seen to be doing the good stuff because they think they're the good guys. Oh dearie me, I don't think so. And they don't want to give any credit out. But it did start back then. And it was when did I leave? I left in 1999.
Right.
And it was things were changing then. I mean, we had all sorts of people in there doing all sorts of kind of things. And you thought, hang on a minute here. You know, we had the guy that printed Polypex millions, and I said, well, how do you get into that job? He said, it's a family business. All our money's offshore. I didn't sign the Official Secrets Act, so I can say whatever I like.
Right,
so
okay.
it's fine. I should write a book. And it just was a breeding ground for people. I got guys of 22 that were very, very scared because the drug culture was very big. I was teaching pottery with wires and knives, and only because that's the way you make pottery. You can't do it any other way. And we had a shadow board. It had to be checked 4 times a day. If anything went missing, everybody went, oh shit, it's a strip search. And I said, no, not in my room. I had 24 blokes twice a day, and I felt that as long as I had the really big guys, i.e. tiny, on my side, I would be safe.
Yeah.
Because you always make sure you've got a friend in the room, because nobody's going to come and help you if they're going to try and kill you.
Well, yeah.
But I can see the culture's got worse and worse, and it really does need helping. I mean, we thought in education we would be making a difference. People would learn to read and write. People would find skills that would help them. But one lad came in, and the most frightening thing for him was that what happened when he came out, because I had some guys on remand for over 2 years, they didn't even go to court, and the court's just outside in the car park in Belmarsh. I think Rolf Harris was in there, should have stayed in there. And he said the problem wasn't coming out and being, and yes, you do the crime, you do the time, but it was his mates. He had to get away from his friends, because otherwise he would just be led into petty theft. And it's a vicious circle, and it's looking for something else.
So it's not rehabilitating.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah, but it's not.
But it's not.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
because you come in there, you hit 22, wow, you're straight in.
Yeah.
And there was some guys saying, I come from Peckham, I can see the flats where I live, you know, because it's that, you can see, I'm on the 13th floor, I can see it from here.
Yeah.
And it wasn't working, it was, but then it didn't really help that the head of education and the padre used to have conversations in the officers' mess about we should bring back hanging.
Blimey.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm not any expert on the conditions in Belmarsh, so I don't have any particular thing I can say about it. But it doesn't sound like it's going very well.
No, and then that was the time when we had lots of shutdowns because of the IRA. And the thing that really pisses me off about that is they got a get out of jail free card. What happened to the guys, like a friend of mine, that were out in Belfast trying to sort the troubles out, and they could be prosecuted. Not good.
No.
Not good.
Right.
But
Well,
there you go. There was lots of security breaches, lots of crazy things went on. It was quite fascinating, but extremely stressful.
It really does sound like you should write a book, to be honest. It really does.
I could sell my story to the Sun if they were
Well,
interested.
I wouldn't go there, but no, you definitely consider writing a book if you've got interesting things to talk about.
Yeah, but I could see the situation, because they said we're going to spend less and less money. And this is in the 90s. Look what's happened now. Now that everybody's running the show, and it's a crazy, scary, drug-induced place.
That does sound terrifying, I have to say.
Yeah, well, I've seen a few videos and stuff, and it doesn't look good at all. So I don't know how anybody's going to sort that out. But if you're going to cut the money in the 90s, and it's going to go down and down and down.
And if the population is going up and up,
and up,
then you find yourself in an untenable position, don't you? You know, you can't carry on like this forever.
No.
And what's the end result? It's probably a catastrophe of some sort, isn't it?
That's it. Because I mean, some people went out and came back in again under another name, and you think, hang on a minute, wasn't that Mr. O'Reilly? And no, suddenly he's called something else, and nobody'd even noticed.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. It's flawed, and it needs sorting out, and I don't know who's going to sort it out. Really.
I'm afraid I don't either, but let's hope that someone does something.
But at
because
least Tommy's highlighted it, and now they agree with him, but he's not going to get any credit.
One of the no, of course not. But one of the things I find very interesting about Tommy is the fact that he's been to prison, and yet they always hang that over his head as if they don't believe that there is any kind of rehabilitative nature to the prison system.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then shouldn't they be treating Tommy Robinson as a victim of the system, like they would treat other people?
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
But instead, he's as if he's some sort of instigator.
I know.
To them. And
it's sort of like he's going to corrupt people because
Yes,
he's been tainted.
Because he's going to say
by
things
being
about what he's seen,
inside,
you know.
and no, it's not at all. He's really a successful case because he's actually turned his life around and done something.
He
And I
has.
think there would be very few people who have done that, especially the people I knew. Anyway, so
I agree.
There you
Thank
go.
you very much.
That's
Cheers.
brilliant.
Where was the chap who wanted to have a talk before? Oh, right, okay. Right, okay, well, is there anyone else who would like to say something while we're waiting? Come on up, chap. How's it going? Nice to meet you.
Yeah. I wanted to say some things about the EU.
Yes.
And the greatest impact is possibly losing tariffs on 87% of the goods that we import. So that would make a huge difference to our economy and possibly the
well,
EU zone.
unpack that for us.
Mm.
So, because there might be a lot of people who don't know what you're talking about when you say that.
Okay, yeah. Well, when we have a no-deal leave on the EU,
Mhm.
that could, we would be absolved of 87% of our tariffs. But that would also mean a 7% increase on any other goods, which is something like cars, vegetables, underwear particularly, and that does not apply to Northern Ireland for some reason. That does not count as being in the EU's sphere of influence in that sort of way. So I feel that's going to severely increase tensions between Ireland and us. How that could potentially become a smuggling port in a sense.
Yeah, it's probably inevitable that's going to happen to
yeah.
some degree, isn't it?
Yeah,
But,
it
the
will,
alternative is a hard border, though, isn't it?
Mm-hmm,
So-
absolutely, yeah. The increasing tension with Ireland is just a really bad idea, considering how we have so many other problems going on right now.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, there was actually a report out today about the impact that no Brexit's going to have on Europe, and it's a lot worse than they first predicted, or at least had widely reported in the papers. But the Irish, I think, are well aware of this, because a huge amount of their agricultural economy comes to Britain, and if we leave without a no-deal Brexit, in a no-deal Brexit, then that line of trade gets cut, and there we go. They then get competed against by the South Americans, who also want to sell us the same goods and at a cheaper price. So it's actually going to make your food cheaper. And I blame you for this, Johnny. Yeah, it's going to make the food we eat cheaper. Yes, right. Yes, it's going to make our food cheaper, but it's going to make life more difficult for the Irish and the Dutch and the Belgians in particular, actually.
absolutely.
Which, because they're quite small populations and we're a much bigger percentage of their economy. So basically, I think they've shot themselves in the foot. They should have given us a fair deal.
It is really. It's such a shame how Theresa May had to leave like that, and she hasn't stuck by her promises. And
She did it to herself. As far as I'm concerned, she did it to herself.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks
Cheers,
very
man.
much.
Right, Alan, would you like to... Oh, yeah. Yeah, come over so I can have a drink and take 5. Talk to Alan for a minute. Let me get a drink and I'll come over and say.
Could somebody else help record this for me? Okay, thanks, Ben.
Right, let's have you.
Is
What
that
have you got to
working?
say? Yeah.
Hello, yeah. I was the. Oh, does this sound okay? Yeah. I was talking at the event in Exeter last time. The bisexual Brexiteer guy.
Okay, I wasn't there myself.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It was some stuff went pretty viral from that one. You might have heard about the incident in the Weatherspoons afterwards. There was a Kekistani flag, and a bunch of us, and some left wingers came over and took the Kekistan flag from us, and that actually turned into a physical fight outside the pub.
Sounds interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it was in the Swindon Advertiser, Devon Live.
We don't have fights here. We don't have
Let's
fights
hope
here.
not, no.
Yeah, okay.
Well, we've got.
What's your question? What's your point?
I just wanted to follow up saying you write on Brexit that's a no-deal Brexit. It is very much in our favour. So the president of Lithuania, she said that a no-deal Brexit would hurt the EU a lot more than it would hurt us. Foreign Minister of Iceland, he said that everyone wants a trade deal with us once we leave. It's just they don't want to upset the EU. And Tony Abbott, former Australian Prime Minister, he says that a no-deal Brexit, what's wrong with no deal? Because Australia does billions in trade with the EU without a deal. But I wanted to ask, what do you guys make of the Brexit legal challenge, which is currently ongoing? Robin Tilbrook?
Yep, Robin Tilbrook from the English Democrats. Yep.
Yeah. So
I can tell you what's going to happen with that now. It's going to fail.
How do you mean?
It's not going to pass. It's not going to fail. Why? Because the judiciary, the judges, are biased against Brexit. That's why. The whole of the establishment is biased against it. He has no... Just as Gina Miller, when she had her legal challenge, she won, so Robin Tilbrook will fail. I can tell you that right now. I utterly predict it 100% because the judiciary are biased against him.
You could say that, but sometimes it does work. I mean, Boris Johnson is very much part of the establishment, but the legal challenge against him, he managed to quash that very easily. Like, they tried to take him to court over the bus thing, accusing him of being a liar. But no, but that completely failed.
Occasionally it works, like when, for instance, Tommy Robinson went to the Court of Appeal because of the flawed trial which he suffered from at Leeds Crown Court, and he got away with it. But it's rare. Generally, and that's my prediction.
I mean, he could be in prison again. He's in court again.
I would love Robin Tilbrook to win, but I'm absolutely sure he won't. He won't be allowed to.
But the case he's making is that the Gina Miller case proves that the government can't just do what it wants without a vote in Parliament first. Article 50 was passed into law. There was no vote in Parliament and no democratic mandate at all for Theresa May's extension. So I think all the lawyers and QCs, people he's been talking to, say they do have a very strong case to say that legally we should already be out of the EU.
Sure, absolutely. It is a strong case. I've seen it, and I've listened to the lawyers that talk about it. It doesn't matter how strong the case is, the judiciary will not allow us to go out. The whole establishment will not allow us to go. Let me ask you, do you think we're going to get Brexit?
It certainly depends. At the moment, it looks like a few months ago it thought we might actually just sneak out on WTO terms, even with Theresa May as Prime Minister. But now it's all in limbo at the moment. We don't know who's going to be next Tory leader.
Let's have an opinion poll here. Who thinks that we're going to get Brexit, say, within the next year? A proper Brexit. Anybody here think? Wow, you're the optimist. My prediction to you is that Brexit is well and truly dead. And the reason why it's dead, I'm sorry to say it, I hate the idea. I absolutely hate the idea. But the Remain establishment throughout Westminster, Whitehall, the judiciary, the mainstream media, the whole lot of them, all of them, don't want us to leave the EU. Therefore, they'll do whatever is necessary to stop us from even leaving the EU. And that's absolutely clear. I hate the idea, and that's my argument is we no longer live in a democracy. But let me go back to you, sir. What do you think?
Well, it all depends. I mean, even on Boris Johnson, there is so much to criticise about Boris Johnson. He did a terrible job as Mayor of London. Not that I'm letting Sadiq Khan off the hook, but a lot of the problems started under Boris. But even on Brexit, he's told us quite rightly that Theresa May's deal would make us a vassal state of the European Union, and then he voted for it. Even Jacob Rees-Mogg has actually been more consistent. He's consistently voted against further integration into the EU. Other people in his group, the ERG, have voted against May's deal consistently, but he hasn't. You can even see videos of him not that long ago saying Turkey should join the EU, and then he uses that as says that's a bad thing when he's campaigning for us to leave. It was just a career decision for him. But while Brexit is being betrayed, and I was going to take this up with Carl, I've already mentioned this to Margaret. Are you guys in UKIP open to seat sharing with other political parties such as For Britain? Because at the moment we're splitting the vote, and we have decided to stand aside for UKIP in the European elections, where we're campaigning for Tommy in the European elections, but also we stood aside in some of the by-elections, the parliamentary by-elections we had recently. So I was thinking, if we were to make sure we did that on a local level. So in Exeter, I was a Exeter City Council candidate in St Thomas for Britain, and the chair of UKIP Exeter, the great bunch of people, they agreed to make sure there wasn't a UKIP candidate in the seat where I was, so that I was For Britain was the only full-on, unanimously, unambiguously pro-Brexit party in that ward. And I actually managed to get more votes than UKIP did last time they were there. So they only got 7. I came last with 113 votes, but UKIP last time came last with 74 votes when they were there. So if we were to keep the seat rate sharing arrangements going, apparently they've done that with a few seats in Stoke, but in Leeds, For Britain had 8 candidates, UKIP had 16, and in some wards the two of us were competing, when there were 33 wards, we could have spread it out much more. So are you open to the idea, while UKIP haven't been doing particularly well in the elections? Oh, is that okay? But while UKIP haven't been doing that well in the local elections, didn't do too well in the European elections, and we're not in every ward anyway, might it make sense for, because people in UKIP will listen to you guys, if we put aside some of our differences, and if we were to have branch chairs meeting up and deciding where to have people to stand and where not stand, and where For Britain stands, where UKIP stands, say, we can, I think it's an image. It sounds petty, but image is important in politics. There are actual policy differences as well, I'd say. But if we were to stand in some of the areas where UKIP haven't done so well in the past, why not let other people have a go?
Sure. The answer is I don't think we have the answer to that. As you know, we're going through election, and it'll partly depend on who the new leader is. What I would say is this. Back in the 2017 general election, UKIP decided they weren't going to stand in certain Conservative seats and took a policy to do so, and have regretted ever since. So why we didn't do a deal with the Conservatives, we decided not to run a full slate in certain seats. And we decided that lost us a lot of votes, lost us a lot of support, and we seem to be manoeuvring. So I personally can't answer your specific question, but I will say generally there's a feeling now within UKIP we need to stand everywhere we can.
Well, but the thing is...
but it doesn't mean it isn't open to discussion, just we couldn't answer it, I think.
But the thing is, well, I'm saying if you two were to get behind the idea of a seat sharing arrangement in certain parts of the country, or at least on a local level, while it's not as if you have candidates in every seat, and especially certainly not in locals. It's certainly worth. I think the party should be open to the idea. I mean, For Britain, we're happy to meet with branch chairs and so on. We're talking about people who've called us Nazis here, but we all know that Nazi is just the N word for white people these days. But there are while Brexit is being betrayed, I think we need to carry on fighting for it, and even on every other issue, to protect people's freedoms. We're seeing you tweeted something, put on Facebook, that local councils have the power to fine you over £2,000 or something for laughing, crying, or arguing too loudly in the comfort of your own home. And I think it's a bit too optimistic to say this is only going to be used for people who are real troublemakers. If government can abuse these sort of powers, they will. And this is why local elections must be fought. So if we make sure we have, if we make sure we're all different wards, For Britain, English Democrats, UKIP, Libertarian Party, maybe if some of the others are interested, obviously exclude people like the BNP and the NF and that, because they are fascist and racists. But if those of us who are concerned about Brexit, concerned about freedom overall, have a sort of an electoral pact, if we meet up and have informally agree not to stand in the same seats, do you think we might get somewhere?
The thing is, I don't disagree with you, but it's one of those things that that's you again, isn't it, Alan? It's one of those things we can't commit to or anything like that because we're in the middle of a leadership election. We don't know what the next leader will say, so we can't go any further on that one. But I agree with you; it would make strategic sense. Yeah.
Do you not think you could bring that up with the leadership candidates while you're going through this? And because it's all up in the air right now, like I say, you haven't been doing particularly well. Even in the height of Brexit chaos, you've been making your vote a protest vote against the Brexit betrayal. You haven't been doing that well. No offence, I'm not trying to put you down or anything.
That's all right.
I've your utmost respect for a lot of the people in UKIP, but
yeah, but you're pressing a point that I can't commit to. Don't you think it's a good idea? Yeah, I do think it's a good idea, but I can't say anything about it.
But could you encourage that to people, say, to the branch chairs and that to agree to it? Do you think it's a good idea?
Well, yeah, I do think it's a good idea, but it's not something that I can unilaterally determine. So it's the best I can do. But thanks, man. No worries.
Sorry for that.
That's all right. Don't worry. Right, sir. Did you want to? Was this? Oh, sorry. Come on up. Can I borrow you? Right, just make sure you hold it fairly close to your mouth.
Thank you very much. I'd like to talk to Alan as well, please.
Oh, right, Alan, don't run off.
Hi. Alan, I want to talk about marriage and families. I understand you've been the marriage, the families...
Families and children spokesman, yes.
Yeah, so I listened to your views before. Can you just clarify what they are on what the appropriate... what is marriage to you?
Marriage is when two people say they're going to get married, decide that they're going to commit themselves to one another.
Yeah.
Traditionally, it's always been sort of faithful monogamy.
Uh-huh.
That's the ideal, which is written into law. Till death us do part, or something like that, is what's written into law. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing, to have a commitment with it. Does it matter to you whether they are of the same sex or of different sexes, or is that important?
Socially, it doesn't. No. to me personally, I wouldn't participate in a same-sex relationship, but
fair enough,
in our democracy, people are allowed to choose that if they want to.
I agree. I think.
Having said that, I don't think we should have implemented gay marriage, because I think it has devalued marriage. It is what a key part of marriage is faithfulness. You commit yourself to your partner, and the problem with gay marriage is it has taken that element of marriage out. Because the legislators could not identify the whole concept of adultery. Yes. They've taken adultery is no longer a cause for divorce. They took that out, so therefore that dilutes gay marriage has diluted normal marriage. I can put it like that. But now we've got it. Now it's stuck, and if people want to do it, then that's what they can do.
Okay. I think I disagree with you that gay marriage has damaged marriage in any way.
I've given you my reasons why. I think it has taken the whole concept of faithfulness in traditional marriage. Faithfulness is a key concept. Till death us do part. Okay, that's traditionally what we've said, and gay marriage has taken that out because open marriage, it becomes much more about open marriage, which many more gay relationships are about open relationships, and that's brought that into marriage, so it dilutes marriage. But yeah, it's now part of law. It's now accepted. It's now accepted as part of law. So
I think we should take a individualist viewpoint and consider it from the perspective of society and the state as being two consenting adults who want to have a committed relationship with each other, and that should be celebrated. I think that's entirely common amongst gay people, although I accept that promiscuity, gay people are more promiscuous than same-sex people, and you can see that from the if you investigate how HIV spreads and things, you can see that there's.
I have no problem if two gay men want to go to bed together. They want to fall in love together. I have no problem with three gay men or four gay men or 10 or whatever. Yeah. If they do it in private, that's their business. But actually, what they said was more than that. They wanted to take an already existing concept and change it for their own purposes of marriage, take it for their own purposes. Yeah. That's why I objected to it, but I don't mind. People can choose to go to bed with who they like. It's not my business. I don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's that's an acceptable position to hold. To say, well, it's not what I would do, but I have to permit everyone else to make their own free choices.
We live in a democracy. People are free to do so. So I don't mind how many people you go to bed with.
Yeah. I wonder Carl's viewpoints on this. He's gone. That's all right. Okay, come and join us.
It's a kind of a crazy viewpoint, which is you can be as crazy and promiscuous as you like, and then two gay guys come up and say, well, can we have a monogamous relationship where we take vows together? You're like, oh no, you can't do that. That's crazy. you can go all the way around town, but you can't put the ring on. So I don't really get where that comes in. Do you know what I mean? Well, it seems like a strange argument. Is that's fine. Like that lifestyle is fine. But if you actually want to pin that down, like everybody else does, then
we had something called civil partnerships. They could have civil partnerships, but that wasn't sufficient for them. They want to have something which had been established for 1,000 years or something. And they said we want that as well. They didn't need it to get to have equal legal relationship between them. But as I say, the argument is over. Yeah. We do have gay marriage here, and it's up to everybody to make up what they think about it and what they do about it.
I guess that's the only part of the argument that I find really unusual, and I've seen a few jokes about it online. That it's quite common, to assume that gay relationships are more promiscuous. But I used to work in a theatre.
Most gay people would admit they are, don't they?
Well, yeah, but when they want to actually put a ring on it, then that's what changes it. Do you know what I mean?
But they want to put a ring on. I mean, if it goes into they want to put a ring on, they want to do that, but they don't want to commit themselves to one other person till death us do part. The vast majority don't want to do that. They want the ring, but without the commitment.
Yeah.
We're talking averages, not individual.
Yeah, and that's where I stand. I'll give you that one back. I've got to say that one because it's.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Good idea. Anybody else want to discuss it?
I know gay individuals who are they are monogamous essentially, and I think monogamy is. It's just so much less stressful than being promiscuous, I would say, especially in a marriage, because I think there are some people who think it can really work to have sort of open relationships, and I think a lot of misery can result that way, but people make their own free choices.
Yeah, sure.
That's fine. Yeah.
We live in a free country.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well,
Cheers. Thank you
very
very much
much.
indeed. Lovely. Anybody else? Anybody else to come up? Here we go. Yeah.
I'll take that off your hands. Come on, we have to have another victim in here.
Anybody else got any views? I'd like to ask, has anybody here got views which they feel you cannot... I mean, this is the whole point of what Carl and I are here about, here to do, to encourage people, despite political correctness, despite all the constraints on what you think you... Has anybody got any views that they would like to express here, which they feel they cannot express at work because it's politically incorrect or anything like that? Anybody here got a view? There must be some people here. Sir, thank you very much. Okay.
Well, I was hoping you'd come back because I wanted to follow up on Weymouth.
Yes, what did we talk about in Weymouth?
Well, back along when you were campaigning for the MEP position, I asked about UKIP's ban on the far right and how it is you don't have a ban on the far left as well because they're equally dangerous and insane. But
Correct.
it turned out that you identified that the worldview of UKIP is sufficiently different from theirs that they would never think to enter into it to participate.
I'm not too worried about communist entryism into UKIP because I get the feeling that they'd come to a meeting, open their mouths, and then get booed out of the room. So,
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I wanted to raise the subject of people who have made a mistake and gone to these other fringe far-right groups like the BNP and the National Front and realised, oh my God, I don't want to be around here. These people don't represent me. What am I doing here? But because of their previous affiliation, they are now prohibited from applying. Well, they can apply, but they get turned down flat.
I actually believe there is a method of the NEC. Is it the NEC that can overturn this in individual cases? The chairman, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So on individual cases, but for lots of people who... And there are plenty of people who make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. But I want to avoid UKIP becoming like the SJWs in that once you've made a mistake, that's it, red button, don't want to know.
Well, I mean, I understand the concern, but I think that it's one of those things that they do have to do to protect themselves, because otherwise you are going to get entryism from the wrong kind of people.
I'm not saying that's bad. I understand. And yes, you do want to keep the fringe lunatics out. Otherwise, they'll try to take over and turn it in and co-opt it, like has happened with other organisations like the EDL. It got subjected to entryism, and the communists specialise in that as well.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So,
but I think the actual Nazi types are starting to take their cues from them as well. I've seen an awful lot of them essentially having these discussions online, saying we need to figure out how to get into these parties, and a lot of them have joined Labour actually. Like a lot of them are aware that Labour is actually open in these regards.
Yeah, it might explain the rise in anti-Semitism.
Well, I honestly thought the Labour anti-Semitism thing was overblown until I started looking into it, and then I saw stuff that you would see on neo-Nazi forums. You know, really quite bad stuff. It's not the majority or anything like that, but these people are definitely there.
Well, they've managed to get their foot in the door. Well, it's up to Labour to sort it out if they want to.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I'm not in any position to challenge the current rules anyway. So, but I don't think that we're going to fall into purity spiraling or anything. I don't think it's too much of a concern.
Okay. Now for a really possibly unpopular opinion. I hope you guys are ready. This is probably going to get me labelled as a biological essentialist. Are you ready?
Well, I think most people are biological essentialists when it comes to something like gender.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you people understand this instinctively, that humans are a process. We're not really a product. We change a lot from infant to child to adult. And in order for that person to reach their maximum potential, a lot of things have to happen and succeed at happening in order to produce a successful new human being. Now, a lot can go wrong along the way.
Yes.
And sometimes it's interesting.
Yes.
But it can either make the individual infertile or it can make them disinclined to reproduce.
And what can do this?
Well, it's not just genetics. I mean, I know how it's portrayed in sci-fi, but humans are the process of genetics plus environment over time.
Yes.
And so you can have a misstep in the genetics or a trauma in the environment, that comes in, damages the organism, and it results in them either deciding for whatever reason that they're born in the wrong body and they need to transition from male to female, or that they're neither, or that they're alien, or they're a tree, or whatever, or that,
right,
or that they're rather too interested in their own sex to bother with the opposite sex. And me personally, I find it interesting, but from the species point of view, it's not going to produce the next generation.
Possibly why the birth rates are declining?
Yeah, so it's a relief that they are a minority, because if you just imagine if that was to continue to grow, say be 20%, that would start to show as a downward pressure on birth rates. And considering that we're a case selective species, that is, we invest a lot in our offspring.
Yeah.
That's a very significant downward pressure on our reproductive rate. So it's a good job that they're a very tiny percentage of the population, otherwise we would be extinct by now.
So where are we going with this line of thought?
Well, I view transgenderism and the variations in sexual orientation as an abnormality. I know that sounds uncharitable.
No, but they are by definition not normal.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were, like you said, the species would come to an end, surely.
Yeah. But people seem to think that no, men and women are exactly the same. Well, I say people. They're promoting this narrative that they're
the
exactly
sort of hard
the same.
left, isn't it? Yeah.
And we can just go and flip a light switch and say, I'm male today. No, tomorrow I'm female. It doesn't work like that.
No. And everyone knows subconsciously that that's not the way it is.
Yeah, and I'm in favor. Yeah, and I'm in favor of having this acknowledged. Okay, so you can have your own opinion, but you've got to accept what reality throws at you.
Yes, that's always been the sort of British empiricist way to be. You can be as conceptual as you like, but at the end of the day, you're still rooted in reality. So as much as you would like reality to correspond to whatever theory that you're laying over the world, if it doesn't, then you have to change the theory. You shouldn't be changing reality.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much.
That's right.
Cheers.
Good to see you again.
You too. Right, okay, so what should we talk about next? Sorry?
Hey, you're right.
I'm very well. How are you?
Nice to meet you properly.
Yes,
You're
you
right.
too. Yeah.
So, is this close enough?
Yep.
Awesome. Right, so I wanted to kind of pick a bone with you.
Yes.
About the term riffraff.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right, full disclosure, I'm kind of a lefty, right? UKIP lefty.
Okay.
So I'm kind of riffraff.
Well, so am I.
Well, yeah, but I'm also an immigrant, I emigrated to China, and I started in the UK with like zero skills, I just worked kind of crappy jobs, dead-end jobs, all the way up until someone just, said, oh, do you want to move to China? And then I had this opportunity to learn all the skills that I have now,
right? Okay.
Which got me really good jobs, starting my own company, things like that. Yeah, and me and my husband were talking about this a lot, and is there an opportunity to use the refugee crisis, specifically refugees, not economic migrants, in a kind of positive way? Because we've got so many problems in the UK. We've got a lot of social problems, and we're thinking of a kind of mentoring system. Where we could take people on a limited basis. So immigration is not just a full stop. It's a limit. It's a time limit thing. Just like mine is in China. You can't stay there forever. That's unless you really, really try. But usually
they probably won't let you.
It's usually a short term thing unless you're going to marry into a Chinese family. So the idea is short term, coming over here. Gaining skills. Getting a mentor, and who are those mentors going to be? Well, we're thinking, some of the rampant amounts of unemployed people that we have here. Right. So is there a positive spin that we could put on particularly refugees, and actually do something to help those other countries? Because that's my most important thing, is assets in other countries that we take away. Is there any chance that we could grow that? So we bring unskilled and we send back people who can actually rebuild countries like Syria. Everybody wins.
I mean, I that's actually something the Dalai Lama said recently, isn't it?
I saw that one.
Something that he'd suggested, and I think he's got a good point. I think that if people are going to come over here, then that we should be able to we probably do have the facility to offer them an education. There's no doubt about it. And we probably do have a moral obligation to do so, just because it would be the humanitarian thing to do. The question is, I guess, who pays for it?
Well, I guess with the amount of money that we're already spending, I don't know numbers, I stay out of that, but it's probably something that I should look into. We had this idea like a few days ago, so I'm like, oh, that's a pretty cool idea. But it just seems like it's a waste. I mean, it's like we try and do something good, but we're really bad at it, and
Yes.
we haven't,
Yes.
I grew up in poverty, it was pretty awful. And it'd be nice that if we could just fix both problems at the same time. And not only that, be the less of a, we need to stop immigration, blah, 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 because, optics,
Well,
it doesn't always look great, yeah? But if it's like, okay, what we really want to do is we want to help these other countries, which, I do, certainly, I've been to a lot of these countries where there's, kids in poverty, and it's way worse than I had it, and it'd be nice if instead of just bringing our own country down, we've already got, millions of homeless people, if we could do something positive for everybody.
Well, it's
such a lefty thing.
No, I think it's a perfectly noble sentiment. But it strikes me that we'd have to go there rather than them coming here. And then you get in trouble like Stacey Dooley did with David Lammy, as if she's done something. As if she's done something wrong.
Maybe, I mean, that's a risk, but it's just something that we've been thinking about a lot. So I want to get your ideas on that.
I think that's a very good idea, and there are already organisations that do that sort of thing. I'm not against it at all.
It's not helping us though.
No,
that's the thing. The more people you can help with us, because we're thinking with the amount of money that you spend on, they're booking out whole hotels for years just to stick 5 people in a room, and it's terrible living conditions. There's no education. It's not a great time being a refugee here. It's not even a great time being an economic migrant. You come here and you can't find the job that you were promised, and everything's terrible, and you're just like, who's benefiting from this? What the hell's going on? You've got people, and this is the kind of pushback thing, the more you get, the hard left saying, oh, we need more immigration, blah blah blah, the more angry these people on the estate get. They're like, oh, we need our communities back, right? And that there must be somewhere we can funnel money that makes more sense than this. And I think that's, instead of just saying something like, let's put that cap on immigration, is there something that's a more nuanced system that we could present that's palatable to everyone because it actually works?
Possibly, but I don't think we have one conceptually yet, do we?
Not yet.
But the reason I think the thing I advocate for is a cap on immigration is because that gives us a strong defined point at which we can say this is what we want, and it puts you either for or against. But I'm not against the idea of trying to do something to help immigrants get an education and then return to their countries so they can improve their countries when they return. I'm not against that at all.
Yeah. So what would you think of, like, instead of just having like or maybe as well as, because it's this argument. I think I spotted you in a video saying, you have to come up with this number, but you have to justify it. Why is it 30,000? Why is it 100,000? Why is it this? And everyone's got their own ideas about that. So something that's more agreeable, but it's not a forever love.
Well,
this isn't going to go on for the rest of your life. It's a mission, and the mission is let's use it now and then make the world a better place. It seems like it'd be a better approach in all respects to have a time limit instead of just an immigration limit. To have either one or the other or both.
I'm not against the idea of a time limit either. The problem is like how much and when and why.
Well, it's the same question as before, but I think it might be easier to answer than just we've got to cut it.
I actually think that the hard cap is just the easier sell.
You think it's easier?
Yeah, because it's unambiguous, isn't it? Because it's like, well, you've got to start from a position that nobody has a right to come into the country if they don't already have citizenship here, and so anyone we let in is at our discretion, and there's no moral conundrum with saying, well, we're just not going to let people in. There's
but beyond a certain point, though, right? Because it always tugs on our heartstrings. We're like, oh, these terrible things are happening, and there's two sides to that as well. It's a little bit irrelevant, but I just think there should be more focus on the problems we've got here.
Yes.
I was reading a website the other day. It's a charitable organisation that go around doing something that's really kind of grim.
Oh God, what do they do?
Yeah, they count dead homeless people.
Oh goodness.
And they try to give them an obituary.
Right.
And there are thousands of them, and most of them are just unknown. he had a nickname. And here's a picture of him from 10 years ago, that we found in his pocket. It's absolute madness, and no one ever hears about these things either.
No,
it's just, we need to help these other people because they're washing up on beaches, and it's all really terrible because there's no focus on the really bad things that are happening
we've got
here.
terrible things here.
We're not perfect. Do you know what I mean? We need to fix our own problems. So we've just been thinking about some kind of we're programmers, me and my husband, so we're like we need to code it so that it all works. Everything has to have a purpose. And is there a solution there, and is it worth thinking about?
Well, I think it's definitely worth thinking about, but I don't have a solution off the top of my head.
Mate, I'll let you think about it.
Thank you.
Nice to talk to you.
You too.
Awesome. Who's taking this?
Go ahead.
You're on it.
How's it going, man?
It's going very well. Good afternoon, sir. What's your current view of the British commitment for overseas aid?
Right, so that's a very good question. A lot of, I think a lot of people don't realise that what the commitment to overseas aid is effectively buying allies. And so, I mean, there's, the reason we give Pakistan money or and India money is because we're effectively keeping them on side internationally. But that is understandably a raw point with most people. When they see billions going to a country that has a space program, they think, well, they've got a space program, you don't need our money, and we actually could use that money here. So I can see...
Are we buying rocket fuel?
Well, who knows? I'm not sure where it goes exactly, but...
I think that's an interesting point.
It is, and it's one of those things where I think it's a double-sided question. Do you want to... Because what we're doing is we're buying influence in the world with overseas aid, and yet it's never sold that way. And so while you're selling it to people in a way that's not real, not true, you're saying, well, it's going to help these people. Well, do you trust the government of Pakistan to help their people with the money we send them?
No.
No, exactly. Of course you don't. Come back.
But that's the point that struck me, hearing you...
Can you come over here a bit?
Hearing you talking just now about the tragedy of people making their weary way to our shores, hoping for a better life because they come from a basket house case. Now, it's just struck me recently that maybe, we're currently borrowing, 14 billion a year to give away to people who are presumably having a worse time than we do.
Yeah.
Maybe we could spend it more, could focus it on something. I think we could focus it more effectively because the stories one tends to read in the press tend to be mocking the incompetence of government rather than celebrating its virtues and successes.
True.
So it's a lot of stories about aid which seems to be poorly targeted. Well, there's a good thing to say about charity beginning at home, but if I had £15 billion of your taxpayers' money, then I think there'd be a reasonable case for spending it to mitigate some of the horrors in other countries. So
To pick that point up, actually, because I think the question really is, what are our obligations to these countries?
I disagree. We have no obligations to those other countries at all.
Right,
absolutely none. But we have a great self-interest. We can promote British values, and isn't the Queen wonderful? And there's some value in that. It's like advertising.
Yeah.
And we can also, I thought the measures of the Tories a couple of years ago were quite uncommonly sensible in saying, let's discourage people from paddling across the Mediterranean. Let's go into the hellholes that they come from and try and make them a bit less hellish.
Well, I completely agree that we have to do that, but obviously you get the problem of something like the Pakistani government, where it's not something that is necessarily reputable, probably very corrupt, and probably the barrier.
Let's get him, or Team America World Police,
yes,
or somebody. Let's have an international cabal of decorruptifiers. Because, if we've got £15 billion to spend, then I could hardly imagine you couldn't do a slightly better job than we're doing.
The problem is, the thing is, this is all sounding a little bit imperial.
Yes, absolutely, unashamedly so.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, I really think that we should worry.
David Lammy will hate it.
Yes, David Lammy will go nuts. I really think that we should probably be looking a bit more inwards at the moment, because I think that until we resolve the contradictions that are currently manifesting themselves in our country, I'm not sure we're in any position to actually be able to help another country. And I don't think just throwing money at the problem is going to solve it.
Well,
so
yeah,
I think the money's going to go.
Throwing money into a country
disappear.
that's deeply corrupt
Yes.
is a big problem. There's a really interesting website in India called IPaidAbribe.com.
Oh, really?
And it's a wonderful project. The idea is that you go to the government office and pay your bribe because you have to, and then you rat them out.
Right.
And if the Department of Motor Vehicles has 50,000 bribes a month, and the planning office only has 2,000, then you talk to your politicians and say, look, we know who the crooks are. You're standing for government, so you go and fix the problem that is there. And I think if we had a policy of promoting virtue, stamping out corruption, and across the world with 15 billion a year, we could have to do a little bit of good with that, because the idea of saying half of all charity money is corruptly stolen, so let's stop spending it.
Yeah,
that's sort of superficially appealing, but it's really depressing.
It is kind of withdrawing from the world, isn't it?
Yeah. Whereas if you say, like, set up something like Team America World's Police, and actually go and kick ass for Jesus.
I don't think that's going to sell.
Well, no, but I wish it would.
But I know what you mean, going out and doing something good for the rest of the world.
Well, just working out what it is, because if someone gives you that bundle of cash and they say, what's the most good you can do with that, the least possibility of evil and the most possibility of good, and what is it you want that country to look like in 5 years' time, it isn't just feeding the poor and homeless, it's kicking the bastards out of government and making it so that the independent businessman can grow his business without paying 20% bribes to the local Chamber of Commerce.
I mean, I agree, but I'm just so cynical on the idea at this point. I don't think that we've got it within our power to decorrupt the world. I don't even think we've got it in our power to decorrupt our own country at this point. I mean, this is a real problem that we have, isn't it? So.
It is, but I'm going to hang on to my infantile optimism for a little longer.
Fair enough.
I
just find myself too cynical on this subject. I think that the only change that is going to be positive that comes from within these countries has to come from within the people themselves who want to see the change. And I realise it's a big thing to ask, and it's a long journey that they'd have to go down. But they have to want it. You know, that's the thing. They really have to want it. And I don't see any massive anti-corruption movements in these countries.
But if you could... I thought about it for a bit, and I can't think of a higher purpose to spend billions on. And there are, if you go looking, you'll find some.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got something like Ayaan Hirsi Ali, a refugee from Europe, moved to America for fear of her life.
Yes.
So there's problems even fairly close to home, which a concerted effort and would have to help a bit.
Yeah.
And by supporting the people in benighted countries whose values most closely align with our own, and whose struggles we admire and whose suffering we regret, has to be better than... I mean, if you look at Mother Teresa, interesting, controversial figure.
Yes.
She didn't go around feeding the poor and homeless.
No.
She, quite a lot of the time, the poor and homeless had a pretty shitty life even under her care.
Yeah.
But they all went to Jesus in the end. So her goal was to do the most important thing, not necessarily pander to the immediate physical needs of people. And if you had... I mean, am I correct? Is it UKIP policy currently to stop the 0.7%?
I believe so. Alan, is UKIP's current policy to end foreign aid? Not. reduce it?
The plan is to reduce foreign aid, but particularly to use it for in disaster, specific like the Haiti disaster. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. The policy is to cut it substantially, and to re-gear it towards really deserving cases where there's, say, been a typhoon or a flood or whatever, where there's been a disaster, but to cut it back from places like Pakistan, which has a nuclear program, and India, which has a space program, and all that sort of thing.
For as long as we're going to have family reuniting rules that mean that we have thousands, tens of thousands coming from those countries each year, I'd happily spend another $5 billion on fixing the disgusting state of those countries, where things that are accepted as moral, which then become values of people who come to Britain. If we could help the people in those countries who have principles that align to our own become more mainstream, it could only do a little bit of good in the world.
Sure, but that's a huge task. It's a huge task.
Who knows? It might be impossible.
Sorry, just the chap said, how are you going to do that without writing their laws? Returning to this is a bit of an imperial project that I don't think Britain's got in itself to do.
I think it's something like the British Council does, of promoting what we think of as good behaviour. I mean, I was in Bangladesh recently.
Can we start a bit closer to home, though? Because I think there's a lot of need for promotion of good behaviour in London at the moment, and in other parts of the North and the Midlands. It's a very expansive project, but I think that the problems that manifest in these countries, I think, are manifesting here now. I mean, look at Peterborough. The Peterborough by-election was obviously some kind of fix, and it appears to have been done by a certain community in Peterborough. So
I don't want to believe it, but I read yesterday the police have dropped the inquiry.
Yes. So apparently, that's nothing to talk about there.
Well, according to what I read on Twitter, which is probably all lies, they dropped the inquiry to avoid hurting people's feelings.
Really? Oh, that can't be true.
I hope it can't be true.
Oh, God, I'm going to have to look this up now, aren't I?
Yeah, you will.
God. But, I think that I think we should worry less about these other countries and more about our own country, because I think we have many of the problems that these countries actually have manifesting here now.
I think for two reasons. It's like your grandmother says, every pound you earn, put 10 pence away and give something to the poor, put something in France for later.
Yeah.
I think it's a principle that you can live by even when, like at the moment, we're still spending more money than we earn as a country. It strikes me as, much though I'd like to say charity begins at home, stop giving money away to countries with space programs, I also think that how will you ever know when is the right time to start again if we stop now? But I really don't like the idea of giving a civil servant 15 billion and then saying, please get rid of that. Like, as long as we don't have that money by the end of the year, you've done your job well.
Yeah, and that is how it works as well. It's how much did you spend in the previous year determines how much you're going to get going forward.
I'd like to see a regular strand on Panorama where they show us the best that our 15 billion has been spent on and the worst.
They're not going to do that. But thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, okay. Is there anyone who'd like to raise a topic of discussion? And, carry on.
Right, so it's just a question about historically what made liberalism prevalent in this country, going back a long time, because it doesn't seem to be very popular at the moment.
It doesn't, does it? I find it very interesting that the other day when Putin called out liberalism, in fact, Owen Jones was defending it on Twitter, and I was just sat there going, but you're a socialist. Why would you care what he says about liberalism? Surely you basically agree with him. That liberalism isn't a satisfactory method of doing things. I think the problem... I actually think the problem comes from Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, actually. The sort of internationalist, what we would now call neoliberal consensus that took over the world. It was good for generating lots of money, and the money disproportionately went to the international businesses and the business owners, which kind of leaves us all out to dry, because we're still actually a nation of shopkeepers. We're still 53% of businesses in this country are small businesses. So when the high streets are drying up and this happens in my own town. They literally just paper over the shops with a shop front where no shop front exists. And everyone else then goes out to the Asda that's a few miles out of the town. They just drive out there. This is all a consequence of the free movement of capital, which is one of the 4 core freedoms of the EU, the movement of capital, goods, services and labour. I'm not sure that's wise. I'm not sure that we should just allow complete free movement of capital. I think there probably should be some kind of restrictions on it. And I suppose that what I'm proposing is more sort of nationalistic version of capitalism rather than the internationalistic version that we're currently ruled by, we currently operate by. And I think that could make liberalism a more popular and more forward-thinking ideology going forward. Because I think at the moment everyone's saying, well, look, you're giving everything away to the entire world and we're all kind of, suffering. What can we do? I don't want to abandon liberalism and capitalism as the method by which we do things, because they seem to be the most fair methods and successful methods. But I think that the focus on who the scales are weighted in favour of is in favour of the internationalist business class rather than the regular shopkeeper. And I think that's the main problem.
Okay, so I mean, traditionally was going back 100 or 200 years, did liberalism gain a foothold because it came top down, because the elite classes were in favour of it, the sort of Lord Actons of the world, or was it very much bottom up?
They were the aristocratic classes were very much against the supremacy of the bourgeoisie, because that was undermining their position in society, as far as they could tell. I can only assume that it's got to come from the bottom up again.
So what was the method by which it came from the bottom up then? What was
political protest and the general wealth. So it's quite long and complicated. I don't want to have to go through it all here. But there's an understanding that freedom creates wealth. If you leave people to make money, then they'll make money. And there was what was the name of the French finance minister? I can't think of his name offhand, but he was obsessed with a nation's greatness being the sum of its wealth, effectively. And this is where we got the term laissez-faire from. It was just like, look, leave us to it, and we'll create it. And so there was a definite incentive from the people at the top, the aristocratic class at the top of Enlightenment France, this was. And so this did come up from the bottom, and it was in the interests of the people at the top. But honestly, I don't even know. I don't know what to propose going forward in this regard. I just think it's a better system of rules than the alternatives, which frankly look awful.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of wonder how we're going to. It's got a nice group here, but I mean, it'd be lovely to have thousands of people who are interested in a discussion of.
So the question really is, like, how do we invigorate this idea into the working people? I would suggest it's appealing to them as shopkeepers, but the reason that I framed this in terms of sort of like a sort of a more patriotic version of liberalism compared to the internationalist neoliberalism is because when capitalism is framed as neoliberalism, it becomes unappealing to the average shopkeeper, because that essentially probably means the end of their business. Eventually, the multinationals will take over everything, and every shop will be a Starbucks or a McDonald's or whatever. You don't get anything like that. And I think that we need to frame it in terms of personal success. So you can start a business if we lower your taxes, if we make the barriers to entry less rigorous. Because one of the things that the European Union loves to do is to raise the regulatory barrier before you can enter any kind of sphere. This is what we saw with Article 13. Effectively, it's going to kill off competition to Silicon Valley by just making it too difficult in their attempts to regulate Silicon Valley. So essentially, the fewer regulations, the better in this regard. And I think the way to sell it is to sell it to the small business person, the entrepreneur. I think that's the only way I can think of off the top of my head, anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, when any discussions come up about capitalism and people are saying how awful this capitalist class are, I tell them every plumber is a capitalist because the tools that they own, the massive increase in their productivity, the benefits of that go to them. And every plumber, every electrician is a capitalist. Then
absolutely. I mean, every middle class housing estate in the country will have like a van with a logo on it, which will be a small businessman who is say an electrician, a plumber, or whatever. And it's those people that I think we need to start appealing to in that regard. I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, and I think that there is a problem though, which is the sort of financial control. I mean, I have a big problem with the way that central banks operate, and I don't think fundamentally there's a problem with central banking, but there's always this pressure to manipulate the economy, and
like
causing
direct
inflation
intervention in the economy, I think, is the concern. I would rather the system be changed so that the incentives flow rather than direct government investment or like input into it. So the rules are more inclined to create a certain kind of outcome rather than actually engineering deliberately that outcome.
Just like Hayek's talking about the government intervenes to create competition rather than to try to create certain outcomes.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. That would be. I think that's the best we can ask for in that regard.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Oh, thank you very much. Did you want
to? Can I ask you a question?
Somebody
else got a question.
Do you mind if I grab a drink first?
Okay, all right
drink's
then.
Gone.
Well, the question I want to ask you, Carl, is this whole thing about liberalism.
Yes. This one.
Do you think it is? And I want to talk not just about economic liberalism, but about social liberalism.
Yep.
And in many ways, people would argue today that classical liberalism, which I think both you and I would identify with, which came out of probably Christian moral roots plus the Enlightenment and so on and so forth, has morphed because it offered people choice and freedom. Those who believed in it have morphed into those that insist everybody should have choice and freedom, and they're going to any constraint upon your freedom is not acceptable. So it's moved into a sort of authoritarian liberalism now, whereby you're going to be free whether you want to or not. And the latest expression of that is you didn't choose to be male or female, so we're going to make sure you're free and you can choose whether you want to be. And that's where liberalism's now got itself. It's a sort of liberal authoritarianism rather than classical liberalism. I don't quite know how we got there, but one has morphed into the other. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no. I think that's very true. And I think this is what I would intersectionality is really. It is very much a top-down way of organising the world, and like you say, kind of Rousseauian force them to be free. Whereas and this. I guess the way I've been thinking about this quite a lot actually. I'm glad you brought this up. The way I've been thinking about this is using the term liberty compared to the term freedom. Liberty obviously being the French derived from Latin, freedom being an old Germanic word. And I think that there is a quantifiable difference between them, because liberty is a kind of it's not just being left alone. That's what freedom is. That's how people generally view freedom. It's being left alone. Not having any kind of arbitrary or despotic power organising you, pushing you down. Whereas liberty seems to come with a set of constraints and requirements. You must have this to have liberty. And it's like, well, I'm not sure that that's the way we should go. Because then you do get into the more sort of collectivist view of it, where, well, actually, we're going to have to make sure that there isn't any physical barrier preventing you from X. Whereas if you are operating under the terms of, say, freedom, that's not something that comes into your worldview at all. I might have the freedom to go and what I want, do where I want, and go where I want, do what I want, and act how I please within, without infringing on someone else's freedom. But I don't have the freedom to just become a woman, That's just not physically possible, So it puts you within a sort of predefined set of a sort of predefined paradigm where you're accepting reality as it is and trying not to be tyrannized by the government. Whereas when you go to the other side with sort of like the more collectivist view of liberty, it's we are going to make things in a particular way, whether you like it or not. And I think there is definitely a distinction to be drawn there. And I haven't thought this through entirely to its very end yet, but I'm totally with you on the where it's going, because the way the progressives work at the moment, it is distinctly authoritarian. There's no getting around it. It is being forced on people from above, and most people aren't really at odds with their own, say, gender role or something like this. And so the fact that there's a tiny percentage of the population that is, it ends up taking a kind of aristocratic air on it, where we've got a minority of the population, and now you can't talk to them in a certain way, because of their liberty, their ability to be the thing that they've decided they want to be, even if that goes against the kind of natural order of the world, the way that we find ourselves, just having been born and raised and created. So I totally agree. There's definitely a concern there, and I think that's what Vladimir Putin was actually talking about when he said liberalism has failed. It's not necessarily liberalism itself as a concept that's failed, it's what's being done in its name and the way it's kind of morphed into this authoritarian thing.
And some people would argue that actually the whole liberal democratic experiment over the last 250 years, some would even say 500 years, is now, because of its inner contradictions or because of this new what I call authoritarian liberalism, forcing people to be free. It means the whole experiment is now coming to an end. Our civilization, Western civilization, as we understand it, is coming to an end because of this new totalitarianism. You will be free, and whether you want to be or not, that sort of thing. Would you agree with that? Or was that a bit too sweeping?
I don't know if I'd say coming to an end. I don't think there's ever really an end to these things, but it's... What I find interesting is... that they have decided it's not that it's the end, it's a universal paradigm in their minds. So they view what we do as something universal that everyone else can do, and I mean, in principle I imagine they can, but if you've been raised in a particular kind of culture, you have a particular kind of set of values and you have a particular set of beliefs, they are not inferior to ours. They are, in my opinion, they're equal and different. And so you're looking at another culture, and this other culture will demark itself. It will say, these are where we draw the lines, and at no point can we seem to draw those same lines. And so this means that effectively these cultures, when they come over here, and you've got the multicultural left saying, "Oh well, we have to make sure that we don't interfere with their business." It's like, well, no. That's not how this works, because that's to say that we actually don't have a culture. There is nothing here that's worth preserving, and there's nothing here that's worth continuing. And in that case, well, why don't we just join them? Why don't we just do things the way they do them in Pakistan, if that's the case? But there is obviously a marked difference between the culture here and Pakistan. Oh. So it's one of those things where you've got to essentially get them to believe that they don't have anything of any value of their own. And I disagree. I think that England's got an amazing tradition. I think we should do something to preserve it. I think it's worth keeping,
Well,
I think we've got a bit, And what I find funniest about it, though, is that whenever they'll challenge like an English person and say, well, what is this? What is that? And they'll easily strip you down because most people don't know, Most people, it's like a fish, well, what's water to a fish? And the fish is like, well, I don't know. I don't have a word for it. It's just what's all around me, But a foreigner will come in and know exactly that you're not an American. They'll know that you're not Canadian. They'll know you're not Australian. And if they can make such fine distinctions between the English-speaking peoples of the world, they'll know you're not French or German, for example. So there must be something definable that is English. And so we have to say, look, we are not superior to these other cultures. We are all on the same playing field. And this is the part that's English. This is the part that is Spanish. This is the part that is French. We have to be able to recognize those things because, like, whenever they say, this country's a white supremacist country, that seems like white supremacy to me. Like, that seems supremacist to say that our culture is so great that all of the other cultures can just exist inside of it because we're so superior to them. I don't agree with that. I think that eventually we'll end up losing what makes England England if we carry on like that, man. And that, to me, that is a statement of equality. To me, that is a recognition that their cultures are valid. Like French culture is valid. And like Konstantin Kissin, when he was on Good Morning Britain the other day, when he was like, well, what are you saying that London's no longer an English city? He was like, well, look, if it was 50% Scottish, then you'd say it'd become more Scottish, wouldn't you? And the guy was like, oh, I have to think about that. It's like, no, you don't have to think about that. That's the most obvious. A child can understand that. That's the most obvious statement in the world. But it's to recognise that there is an equality between English and Scottish culture. So you put them both on the same scales and you recognise them as things that are equals. But the left at the moment refuses to do that with cultures that don't come from Europe, basically. Cultures that come from other parts of the world. They seem to innately think and value as inferior to our own. as if we there's not even a contest. You know, they're automatically beneath us. And so we have to look down as if they're children and, oh, no, you can't say that, you can't do this. You know, you can't impose on them in this ways because it's just unfair. It's like, no, it's not unfair. You know, it's perfectly fair. All of it is a competition and we're all in it. So, but yeah, so I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, sure, no, lovely. Anybody else got any questions?
Yeah. If not, should we all go to the pub? I thought that'd be a good session. Oh, go on, one more. Go on.
It's okay, it's going to be quick.
Go on then.
Right up the top. Right. With regards to the government, and you've got these various important positions like the Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary, Chancellor of the Exchequer, so forth.
Mm-hmm.
These are positions that carry a lot of responsibility.
Yes.
And when I look at the opposition Labour Party, I look at individuals who have been pegged shadow, this, that and the other, and I find them wanting. And I would like UKIP to make it a policy that they're going to implement a competence test for people who hold these positions. You can become an MP. I consider getting elected a competence test in its own right. Well done. But to hold a position in the government, there needs to be a higher bar. And it frightens me that some of them may actually get appointed to government positions, and I don't think they're that good.
See, I completely agree with you that the Labour Party is terrible in every way and should be destroyed, but...
UKIP for more bit.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's the only way to be sure. But I don't think that we should give any political party or actors the ability to prohibit other people from becoming political actors, because the standards that you choose might seem very reasonable to us, but frankly, I'm worried that some radical leftist is going to get in and go, well, you know what? I actually hate these standards. I actually think that white people shouldn't be allowed to run, or I think that men shouldn't be allowed to run, because we've got different standards to you. We've got different parameters that we would judge competence by.
That's why I said competence.
Well, yeah, but then it becomes, what do you mean by competence? Now, you're thinking probably something meritocratic, as in, can he do the job well? They're not thinking that. They're thinking, well, is there an equal outcome of, you know, white to non-white people, or men to women, or whatever it is? So I really think that the ability to become a politician and, you know, join the government should be open to all, and it's up to us to choose them with our votes. I think that has to be important. Like, it has to be that way. Otherwise, we're going to get a kind of engineered society where whoever's in charge at the moment will just set the rules that deliberately exclude certain kinds of people, and they might be very reasonable people in other regards.
So we'd end up reinforcing the Westminster bubble. Well, we don't want that.
Yes.
All right, fair enough.
Thanks a lot.
Shall we go to the pub now?
Yes. Let's do it. Oh, sorry. Hello. Did you want to... yeah, come on in. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Tegan.
Nice to meet you.
I just wanted to say, why do you think that you've got a better right for my future?
What do you mean, sorry?
For Brexit, it's my future and I can't even vote.
Well, it's my future too, and I did vote.
Yeah.
So, well, this is just how we do the democratic decision, isn't it? Everyone has a vote when we have the vote, and the decision has to be implemented forward. I mean, there'll be... In your future, there'll be votes that you take part in that children at the time don't get to vote in, and you know they could come along with the same argument and say, well, you know, why should you be able to decide? But we've got to set the boundaries somewhere, and if we say, well, voting age is 18 and anyone from that point onwards can vote, then we can then carry on with the political life of the country. Otherwise, we kind of find ourselves in a bit of a quagmire, saying, well, you know, who's allowed to do what, you know, and we also bind future parliaments by saying you can't do these things because people in the future that don't even exist yet might disagree with the decisions made. Yeah. And that means that everything kind of grinds to a halt, I think.
Mm. Yeah.
Well, I think I can reassure you to let you know that your choice to travel is not going to be taken away. You'll still be able to travel. You'll still be able to do those things. Because the thing is... Well, yeah, I mean, of course. There are like 212 countries in the world. You'll still be able to travel. And most of them aren't first world countries either, so they're going to be eager for people from the first world to go to these places and spend their money and make their places a better place. So you will still be able to travel. That's not going to stop. Well, I promise you'll still be able to travel.
Okay.
Thank you. Cheers. Where have you been?
I've been off in a bit.
See, we were about to go to the pub.
Just about I got here in time then.
Okay, so what did you want to say?
I was going to put forward a suggestion actually.
Yep.
Something I was thinking is maybe we need a digital bill of rights.
Yes.
You know, going forward. Maybe that's something that we need to secure free speech, to protect us from corporations that are using the internet to belittle the people.
Yeah.
You know, things for example, protecting our free speech, but also things like stopping telemarketers annoying people, you know, all variety of things need to be protected.
So the best way I think to approach a kind of digital bill of rights is by regarding the social media account that you own as property. As in, you know, my YouTube channel, that's my property. And everyone kind of, I think, instinctively views it this way anyway. You know, no one else has a right to have access to my YouTube channel, even though it's managed by, you know, somewhere in San Francisco or whatever. So technically, physically, they could do it. It's the same as a landlord. You know, you rent a room, that's then your property. You know, that's your room. You've paid for it. So the landlord can't just come in and start fiddling around. You know, he has to apply to you to, you know, give you a time and date that he wants to come around and deal with it. And I think that a social media account should probably be treated in much the same way. It might not be something that you physically have in your hand or something, but I think everyone instinctively does understand that it's yours. You know, you created it, you built it up with the followers, you know, the people who decide to follow it. And so I think that it should essentially start on the idea that your social account is your private property. And I don't think it should be taken away arbitrarily.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. I mean, the thing is with the law, people try to apply the current law that we have that was written, say, 40, 50 years ago about property or whatever, to social media or anything else on the internet or with technology, even mobile phones, for example. But that doesn't work because they run so differently to anything we've had before, you know. You look at, for example, you know, how you can... how telemarketers scam people. The way that's done is so different to anything else that happens in the world.
Yes.
That any previous law written for robbing people in the streets, it just doesn't apply because it's totally different. And you need a Bill of Rights to protect that. And like you say, with taking down accounts, that is your account. That is something you've worked hard for. That is something that is
and that's something
inherently
you
yours.
own as well. It is yours. You own it. You know, it's something that exists. It's tangible. People can see it. They can reference it. It can get you in trouble. It can get you fired. You know, it can make you money. You know, it can become a livelihood. And so, I think that this is actually the key issue of the internet going forward, because people forget that social media is only like 10 years old. You know, this is very, very young. It couldn't even vote yet, you know. And it's one of those things that we've got to get to grips with now. And unfortunately, it's the Americans who are going to have to do this for us. You know, we can't do this. So it has to be basically pressuring the Americans, look, get Donald Trump to put a digital Bill of Rights on the table and just make sure they can't screw us whenever they feel like it.
About a month ago, Donald Trump did put something out, and he said, there's a lot of censorship going on. It was on the White House website, and he said, if you've experienced censorship anywhere in the world, let us know. And essentially, the point of it was, Donald Trump then has a massive list, probably thousands, I suspect, maybe tens of thousands of people who have gone on social media or the internet and have somehow been censored for their political views. And he's providing a home for those people, and hopefully he'll use that as case studies, effectively, to belittle these companies and go back at them and go, well, you're attacking the people, we're going to fight you.
Yeah,
bring
he
them to
said
justice.
He said the other day that someone should sue them, you know, and he's got the power to start initiating procedures against them, anti-monopoly procedures. So fingers crossed he does something. You know, he's our best hope at the moment, I think.
Definitely. I mean, the ideal solution is new laws to go in place to protect these things and to bring back the people who've already gone. But we do have, in most countries in the world, monopoly laws that prohibit companies from censoring people, from blocking smaller companies, from all these different things, that if you look at it in the right way, that's what they're doing. Again, it does need new laws for the digital age, but it's the same principle that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I would be more inclined to describe it like a cartel at the moment, because the example of Patreon and Maker support, I think, is a really strong one. Because Patreon, obviously, is a crowdfunding website where people can just donate, and then Patreon pay whatever the money is collected to the creator creating it with a 5% cut. And they had a competitor website called Maker Support who were going to do the same thing, and they did. You know, they were just operating the same payment processing through Stripe. And Patreon, they didn't... Stripe, for some reason, rescinded the business with Maker Support, rescinded doing business with Maker Support. And that strikes me as cartel behavior, because it appeared to come in response to things that Patreon had done and decisions they had made. So that seems to be some kind of illegitimate behavior. And that's the kind of problem that we have, I think. The fact that they're all in contact with each other very, very quickly and very easily through the internet. And they're completely capable of orchestrating these things. And then you see where the mass deplatformings. Project Veritas the other day lost the video off YouTube, off of Vimeo, and they were banned from Reddit. All in the same day, or like the same couple of days. And it's like, it's too much. It's too much, and it's becoming tyrannical.
Yeah, and it's like, for example, when Facebook banned He Who Shall Not Be Named, because of course this video might be going on that platform.
Yes.
When he was banned, they didn't just ban him. They said in their statement they banned him for a load of nonsense that he clearly didn't say, right?
Yes.
But they also banned, I would guess, in the hundreds, possibly thousands of UKIP activists, of his supporters, of anyone right-wing or pro-free speech, right?
Yeah.
They banned them. Some of them got their accounts back, some of them didn't, but they banned them for about a day. And during that day, thousands of posts were taken down, thousands of pages were taken down. Basically, half of what we'd produced on the internet for the last few years was gone. And I went through my page, and loads of posts I know in the last few weeks had just vanished. And it was almost an act of showing you may have these pages, but they're ours. We control them. We control what you do. We control what you say.
It's a book burning. It's absolutely a modern day book burning. It's one of those things where, I mean, like, none of what you had posted was against their rules, which is why it'd been there for such a long time, until they make the arbitrary decision, right, that's it, no more of the man who must be named, and therefore, that's it, it's all gone, as if straight down the memory hole. It's very Orwellian.
And the worst bit is, they left a few posts, at least on my page, and I imagine of everyone else's, about him on their pages, right? And what happened is, and they've done this 2 or 3 times to me, is they've gone through, the other day, I got a 7-day Facebook ban, for a post that I'd been posted in, I think it was October last year, that didn't break the rules when I posted it.
Yes.
But because it broken the rules that they'd since enforced, and I hadn't gone back and deleted it, they banned me for it.
Yes.
So I've now had to go through and delete every post that I'd ever written that mentioned him, just in case they ever found it.
Yes, because there's no statute of limitations at all. And like you say, it's unfair because the standards keep changing. I had the same thing. I posted videos in 2016 that were completely permissible, and not only were were left alone at the time, when I sent them, when they got the algorithm, again, like, something like 2017, when they were like, right, we're going to algorithmically check each video, and they come back, demonetized, do you want to apply for review? They were reviewed and confirmed to be fine, and then remonetized. And yet, then come early 2019, that's it, the video itself is going to be removed. And that's a demonstrable example of how the standards have changed, and previous work that was acceptable when it was posted has become unacceptable, and then I'm being punished for something that wasn't wrong.
Yeah, if they're going to do this, if we're working on the presumption that it's okay for them to change their rules, well, that's one debate, right? If we assume that's going to be okay, then you can't punish people backwards for things that were okay when they did them. That's sort of a basic point of any civilization. You punish people by the law that was as of the time they did the thing.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly the way we wouldn't run a society. If tomorrow we were going to criminalize wearing sunglasses, you wouldn't punish you for wearing them the day before. It would be totally illegitimate. It'd be utterly immoral. And that's the whole point of these things. But no, I think you raised a good point there, man. I think you raised a very good point.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, let's all go to the pub.
Sounds good to me.